Hi everybody, my name's Jonathon Hannon, and also in the presentation is my colleague Dr. Atiq Zaman. We're going to be talking today about the roles and opportunities for zero waste in university education, research and sustainable campus management. And we're introducing a concept that we have talked about over a number of years, this concept of a nexus for international zero waste academic collaboration. Just to begin, this slide captures, I think, perhaps the junction of two worlds, the wasted and wasting world, which has been our past, and then the opportunity that zero waste presents going into the future for us to innovate and change the way that we're doing things and to provide a more sustainable, clean, green future. So my name, as I said, is Jonathon Hannon. I'm the coordinator of the Zero Waste Academy at Massey University. I've been in this role for about 18 years. And along the way, I met Atiq, who's a wonderful colleague and doing tremendous things at Curtin University. So I'd like to hand over to him. We're going to interchange through these slides. We're both going to be talking about our experience and different projects that we're working on. We hope the presentation comes across well. And just one quick point at the beginning, there's going to be a PDF of this presentation. It contains a number of references and quite a lot of quite complex information. So for people that are involved in zero waste from an academic point of view or a technical point of view, you can follow up by looking at the PDF and get hold of the references. So there's a lot of information in the notes. So away you go, Atiq, welcome.
Thank you, Jonathon, for these introductions. And this is Atiq Zaman, and working as a lecturer at Sustainable Policy Institute, it's called and School of Design and Built Environment at Curtin University. And based on the discussion that we'll be doing today is like about like global waste issue. And you can see from these pictures is like waste issue is very, very complex in relation to disaster management waste or electronic waste that we are having, or pharmaceutical waste, or nanotechnological waste, and so on. And also we have seen like how plastic is kind of polluting our environment. So the waste or issue that we are kind of facing at this moment is very kind of biggest challenge in our environment. And globally, waste issue is rising in a point that become the one of the public and environment health emergency, and it warrant urgent and comprehensive response from us. And we have seen that our ocean is the biggest dump site for millions of tons of waste. And every year we are kind of also sending our plastic waste, particularly in oceans. So how did we get here? So to understand the current scenario, I would like to actually to discuss some of the thematic challenges in relation to urbanization, innovation, and waste. And we've already seen that half of the world population that live in urban area, and 75% of the global natural resources that we use around the world is actually in the urban settings. And 70% of that waste that we create around the world is coming from our cities. And when it comes to waste management system, and I gave this statistics here, is like around 1.47 billion tons of waste we generate, municipal solid waste we generate around the world. And 84% of that waste is collected. That means like 16% of the waste is not even collected in our system. And only 15% of those collected waste is recycled, and 85% of this collected waste is managed through landfill. So when you talk about holistic global point of view, we are not really collecting our waste. And the second, can you please go back to the previous slide? So, and the second issue is about like the characteristics of waste, because when you link with human innovations in relation to the consumer product that we are kind of developing or innovating. So human innovations often brings with new challenges. For example, in the earlier stage, we have steam engine, electric motor, television, and so on. And we are living in the era of internet and smartphone, 3D printing, and so on. But if you link that, the human innovation with waste characteristics, that we can simply say that the simple biodegradable and non-hazardous waste that we produced in the earlier human industrial time and those waste characteristics has changed to more complex, non-biodegradable, and hazardous. So this is another biggest challenge when it comes to urbanization and innovation in relation to the waste. So the second thematic area that I would like to emphasize on consumerism and through society. And one of the main driver of consumerism is like economic growth and consumption and waste. And often actually we don't relate economic growth to waste management. So when you talk about waste management, often you would be listening or talking about like how technology can solve this issue, but we like often ignore the fact that waste is a kind of induced from the economic growth that we have, and the economic growth is measured through GDP. That means like the more we consume, the more people would be shopping and buying, the more GDP would be growth. At the same time, the effect would be producing X amount of more waste and so on. And we have already experienced that in these pandemic situations, like GDP is growing, going down, and so we to improve that GDP, that means like our government or government around the world is promoting how to consume more. That means like that consumption has an indirect effect, like we would be producing more waste at the same time. So the second that is linked with GDP would be the planned obsolescence. I called it like waste ready product. So manufacturers are actually producing the product or the goods that is actually in the intentions is like single used and waste ready product. So you just consume one particular time and then you throw it away. And also the other tool that you used in the marketing term, like the manufacturer demand. That means like there's no demand for in reality, but there's artificial demand that manufacturer would be creating, that the term that we called manufacturer demand. And one of the good example would be like the bottled water. Most of the developed country has like the high quality water, but still would be consuming significant of bottled water in this because we have manufacturer demand, like artificial demand that we have. And on top of that, we have pursued consumerism, like advertisement, and all those things become in our consumerism lifestyle in a way, like we've even like as a simple consumer, a consumerism part of our identity, like how we address, how we identify in the society. That means like the more we consume or the brand that we are using, it linked with our consumerism. So that lifestyle actually linked with the amount of waste that we are producing. Next slide. So all those that I kind of described, like urbanizations, innovations, and also the environment that we have, like economic system, it's are linear. So all material flow in the linear economic systems is mainly we take materials like from our natures, like raw materials, we refine those materials and we manufacture new product, and we consume certain product or the product that we are manufacturing, and end of that life cycle we dispose to landfill. And the example that I gave you, that the municipal solid waste context, like 85% of the waste that we produce is going to landfill. That means like it is straightforward a linear system. So how can we challenge that linear system and transform to a circular system through our segregations, through recycling, remanufacturing, and also taking back those resources within the system that we have. One of the key challenges or key differences when it comes to linear versus circular economy or circular system is in every single step of our consumption process, from raw materials, refine, manufacturing, we added value. So the mobile phone that we got as a consumer, it has a significant supply chain, and every single supply chain stage we added value in it. And if you just not recycle it or using those minerals, then we just send to landfill, then it is not like an effective solution that we are thinking. So the difference would be in the circular economy is like the how can we retain those value. So value retain system is the main purpose or one of the key principles in circular economy, and this circular economic principle would be based on zero waste concept. And my colleague Jonathon would be explaining what is the zero waste concept and how that would contributing with the challenges that we are kind of currently facing.
Great. So this slide just captures, I guess, some of the creativity and innovation, some of the controversy, some of the success, and define, I guess, what Zero Waste is doing. Zero Waste is a heterogeneous global community of practice. It involves a whole lot of different activity, and you can see the patterns of what is and isn't zero waste across all of what's happening globally. The following points are made from a journal article that Atiq and I were involved in co-authoring. And one of the key points is that zero waste movement promotes the most assertive regime of policy instruments and interventions aimed at conserving and cycling resources, avoiding pollution, addressing climate change, and actualizing sustainable development. It can be argued, although often this is not is quite debated, it can be argued that zero waste is actually not a competitor to traditional integrated solid waste management theory, that it's actually a synergist in catalysing a shift up into the largely uncharted top priorities of the waste hierarchy, which have not been exploited, even though they are our supposed top priorities. The zero waste movement, I would argue, enhances the biodiversity of ideas seeking to address waste issues and to expand the reach and resilience of innovation seeking. So zero waste, as I said, is a broad church, if you like. There's a lot that comes in that, importantly industrial and municipal, as well as the activist and community spheres of practice. There's also a global growing zero waste cities movement. Zero waste has been practiced in underdeveloped and developed economic settings with a great deal of success. And I think also, which is the area that Atiq and I are involved in, is working in terms of science publication and the academic setting, is there's now an appreciation of zero waste in that space, although that's an ongoing challenge. Zero waste, it's important to understand that it's both a downstream conception, if you like, in terms of reforming waste management at the end of the pipe, but there's also a whole nother community connected to zero waste, which is this upstream community, essentially aiming to redesign all of our production, products, packaging, and resource recovery systems into this circular economy concept. Zero waste is unashamedly a hyper-aspirational ideal, and various authors talk about the complete socio-economic redesign culminating as a second green industrial revolution. Elkington talks about zero noughts as being pioneers seeking to break the sustainability barrier. Zero waste can also be argued is that it's strategically controversial in opposing landfill and opposing especially incineration, and that there's creative tension involved in terms of the formal definition of zero waste versus, as Vaughan Levitsky describes, zero waste is simply shorthand for innovation and better resource management. The UNEP, I think, usefully identifies zero waste as creating a continuum of aspiration in responding to the never-ending nature of waste management tasks. And if you reflect on those, the slides that Atiq has shown, you can see the way products and services are changing over time. So this is a problem that we have now, but we're going to have 50, 100 years into the future. And I think that's what makes zero waste such a vital and important concept today. So in terms of the topic of our discussion today, this is some ideas that gelled when I was involved, I guess, firstly going to the Zero Waste International Alliance conference in Canada and meeting incredible guy, Rodrigo Sabatini. So a bit of a shout out to Rodrigo. I hope he gets to listen to this presentation. And then latterly going to Zero Waste Week in Brazil, where Rodrigo invited a range of people there as part of Zero Waste Week. And again, another shout out. It's amazing what's happening in Brazil, in particular, the Zero Waste Youth movement. And I want to say also hi to Lais and Gustavo, who I've worked with, and we'll talk about a little bit more in terms of the case study. I think so. These ideas are something that are happening through these international conversations. And in particular, Atiq and I could see the value of a network of people working in university or tertiary education and in science space, actually working together and recognizing that we need to support each other, collaborate and share ideas. And one of the things, so this graphic just captures, I guess, some of our dreaming and scheming around what might make zero waste people working in the setting enable us to work better, and I guess to refute some of the bad science that's been put out there in terms of conventional waste management thinking, which is not working. So in terms of our discussion of this concept of a nexus for international academic collaboration, this is based on sound scientific research theory. In particular, one of the key framings is this idea of living labs. And so there's a range of different things I want to talk through about that, because it's really important, I guess, when you're working in a science space, to be building your ideas and your conceptions and your framing based on the precedent of science. And living labs, we think, I guess, is a model for developing some real value in terms of zero waste contributing to change and making change. So this concept of living labs was first developed at MIT in the Place Lab project, which involves living labs based in conjunction with reality-based experimental observation. Living labs, the term, has played a key role in the so-called innovation spiral for driving the development of ICT technologies, information communication technologies, and the co-design and validation of new technology products. Living labs have been described as ideas factories, R&D in the real world to better innovate for the real world. And right at the very bottom is a reference to a book chapter that Atiq and I and other colleagues were involved in, describing this idea for a nexus for international zero waste academic collaboration. And the term living labs also specifically describes innovation seeking via engaging tertiary student learning and the research community within the context of a city-university relational partnership. So there's a whole cluster in terms of living labs literature that involves this educational R&D focused living labs. There's based on demonstrating campus and community sustainability, campuses as incubators of sustainable products and services, and student engagement and learning in terms of real world situations. So this is the framing for the two case studies that we're going to be presenting later, this concept of living labs and student research driving problem solving in the real world for the real world. The context for this and why I guess we draw on living labs research theory guiding the formation of ideas is that globally there's numerous complex and interrelated and interdisciplinary issues, i.e. climate change, poverty alleviation and zero waste and circular economy, that can benefit from innovation and collaboration with student engagement in real world problem solving. And that's a win-win both for students and for institutions trying to resolve some of these issues. We have globally, we have a recognized deficit in our ability to fund research and development. Across the globe, there are 180 countries, over 1,800 cities of more than 300,000 people. There are over 16,000 university institutions and approximately 2.5 million students involved in higher or tertiary education. So it makes the city-university nexus and the involvement of student research a really powerful opportunity to help communities, in particular cities, address very real world problems and to create innovation and breakthrough. Atiq?
Yes, thanks, Jonathan. In this slide or from this presentation, I would like to share some of those initiatives in terms of zero waste and also the circular or living lab model at Curtin University. And as a tertiary university, we have, it's kind of similar with many like other universities as well, like we have teaching focus, we have research focus, we have student initiative or education program, and we have publications. That's next. So from teaching and publication point of view, in relation to zero waste and the waste management, we have a postgraduate program. It's called Sustainable Waste Management, and it is part of our postgraduate program. It's called Environment and Climate Emergency, and I'm also the coordinator of that postgraduate program. So this is actually to bring like the more teaching environment to our students so that they can actually have a holistic solution in terms of zero waste and sustainable waste management as a whole. And in terms of publications, because I just discussed in my following slide about research and student initiative, but in relation to publications, we recently published a book called Zero Waste: Reconsidering Waste Management for the Future, and with my colleagues. And so this is some sort of outcome is like in terms of teaching and publications point of view. And the next slide, please. So now I'll talk about like, as Jonathon mentions about like living lab and the importance of living lab and so on. So one of the particular living laboratory that I'd like to introduce today is like Legacy Living Laboratory. We have Professor Greg Morrison and his team actually kind of developed this living laboratory, completed it, and it is currently in the service. So that means like student can visit this space and also use this space and so on. And in the middle of this picture, you can see, sorry, the previous slide, two of those student is like PhD student, one of my PhD as well. So this student is actively involved in the process of the whole construction process, and also they'll be studying whole life cycle of the project of this circular economy based living laboratory project. So one of these key principles of this living laboratory concept is learn by doing approach. So that means like would be doing and also learning at the same time. What is the complexity of offsite construction? What is the complexity around when you talk about like whole circularity within the system, like, you know, the construction industry, for example, here, and so on. So that we can test different elements and we can inform the policy and research outcome and can kind of change the policy around whatever we learn from this living laboratory point of view. Next slide, please. So, and this legacy living laboratory not only focusing on material circularity and design for deconstruction, but also it kind of has a holistic kind of in a precinct level solution. So it has a like EV system, it has like another kind of electronic vehicle, so kind of smart transport as part of solution. We have water sensitive design so that the whole precincts can be water dependent based on like the through rainfall and rainwater harvesting system. It has solar power, and it not only the traditional solar power system, but it has a microgrid solar power system. That means like the surplus solar energy can be traded within nearby surroundings rather than sending back to the main grid. So this is a kind of blockchain microgrid concept that this house would be kind of testing in these facilities, and also in relation to indoor environmental quality and so on would have like the gadgets. So it is a true form of a testing ground for different products, as Jonathon mentions about like how living laboratory can be benefited for testing different ideas, testing different you know, even product and their performance and so on. So this legacy living laboratory is actually, you know, focusing on that. Next slide, please. And this is some of those design principles. As I mentioned, this is a truly circular design principles that we try to apply in these particular precincts and or in this particular building. And one of those is like all the materials that was used in the particular building is designed for deconstruction. So end of life cycle of this building, so that every single component can be deconstructed. And also we use some sort of innovative idea, like how can we you know, challenge some of the status quo and so on. For example, in the top left-hand corner pictures, we show the nice window. Actually, it is not a window, it is actually door. So the innovation in that particular area is like to have this customized window, the cost would be around $6,000, and that would provide same sort of thermal and also acoustic performance and so on. But we had the kind of standardized door available. So we actually tested like whether the door can be, you know, substitute some of the window that we available in the market, so that we don't need to customize build, you know, how to, you know, reduce the, you know, the cutoffs and so on. So it will also reduce the, you know, footprint in terms of materials and, you know, the customized design and so on. So this is a kind of an example, like how we can think outside of box. How can you use door as a functions of windows and so on. In the second, left-hand corner in the bottom, the pictures, it shows like we used like the whole panel instead of cut off. The reason is like so that it kind of produce less amount of waste during the construction. And the whole building in off-site construction, that means like it was constructed in the a factory environment, and it is like built in these new premises. And you can see from you can see from it was like screwed. That means like, as I said, like it is designed for deconstruction. And the right hand bottom pictures, that means like you can unscrew all those panels and reassemble the whole building. So the whole deconstruction concept is actually considered at the beginning of the design process, so that the whole building can be deconstructed. And I think I can relate that one of the project that I was involved with Jonathon with and Christchurch, like the whole house reuse project, and we identified in the whole house reuse project is like, if you don't plan ahead in the construction process, then it would be very complex to even the available materials in the particular house and so on. So this design or legacy living practice is showing like, if you design upfront, then we can deconstruct the whole building and the later on. Next slide, please. So another kind of innovative idea that we applied in this particular living legacy laboratory is like how to use plastic as a new part of solutions. You know, we are talking about plastic as a huge problem, and these paving are kind of made out of recycled plastics. And you can see those, like, you know, how those, and you can reuse in the different purposes. You can reuse in the paving, and also end of the, you know, use phase, you can maybe use for, you know, other purposes and so on. So we kind of bring that solution in this living laboratory as part of test ground, and so that we can, in any innovative ideas can be tested in this precincts. Next, so the main objectives of this legacy living laboratory is like, it is fully circular economy, as I said, designed for the assembly and deconstruction, and it is a modular building, and the outcome is like factor 10 reduction in greenhouse gas impact. So if you now compare with the traditional, if we build the same building with the traditional construction method, that would generate like 10 times more greenhouse gas emission, and that would be, you know, promoting like climate change and so on. So how can we reduce greenhouse gas emissions? And we kind of not only theoretically prove that, we actually practically doing that legacy living laboratory, and we kind of prove that like factor 10 greenhouse gas reduction is possible through alternate construction process and through this circular economy based design for deconstruction process. So this is the second that I'd like to discuss in this presentation, is about student initiative and education program that we are running at Curtin University. And one of the projects that we are currently running is C3 project. And the key objective of this C3 project is how to, you know, kind of phase out disposable coffee cup. As you know, like 16 billion coffee cup used every year, and 92% of those are going to landfill because those are not recyclable or not biodegradable. And that will take around 20 years to, you know, decompose within our environment. And those 16 billion coffee cup would take 6.5 million trees to produce them. And this is really unsustainable practices that we have, and but unfortunately, this is more convenient for coffee lover to take, you know, those disposable coffee cup and in their, you know, the coffee demand that we have. Next slide, please. So to overcome that challenges, so we have a student initiative at Curtin University. It's mainly the whole C3 project is driven by a student. One of our postgraduate PhD student actually initiated that project as a part of collaborative project and education program, and now it's become mainstream, kind of, you know, it is also part of or embedded in our program. For example, the unit that I'm running, like sustainable waste management, and it is part of their assessment that how can student you know, find a solution out of the problem that we have. So it's a real problem, and how can student phase out those, you know, single-use coffee cups in reality. Next slide, please. So as part of solution, that student would be looking into a different solution. So one of those solutions can be like cup sharing program, for example, and how cup sharing program would be enrolled in our Bentley campus at Curtin University as a huge campus at Perth CB, in Bentley area. And then as so student needs to think the Bentley campus as a kind of as an entity, and how the cup sharing program would be successfully in, you know, rolling out in these precincts and so on. The second part of the solution the student would be seeking is like washing station, because if you want to have a keep cup, for example, student would like to have their own cup, then the one of the complex thing about keep cup is like you need to wash it and you need to provide washing stations. And so that holistic washing station or eco hub can be provided within different precinct area within campus area. But though how those washing station would be interlinked with each other, that means like they can talk each other through smart gadget system or smart interactive system, so that it would be a cloud-based smart solution, so that vendor actually can know like how many cups are stored in the washing station and so on, so that they know their business is not hampered through this new program like Keep Cup system or cup sharing system. And also there'll be a cultural empowerment awareness programs to promote awareness to students and the people who would be using these facilities. Next slide, please. So this is a kind of example from previous student work, like when student actually design their own cups and in kind of embedded with RFID and smart solutions, as I mentioned, like the sharing systems or keep cup washing station would be interlinked with each other, and that would be linked or embedded with the existing business system, so that the whole business system is not impacted by the solution that student would be offering. So it is a holistic business solution rather than environmental solution of phase out disposable coffee cup system that students would be looking. So in this diagram in the bottom, they're showing like how washing station would be performing, what sort of awareness program that would be doing with the different type of marketing strategies and so on. Next slide, please. And also, as I mentioned, we are looking in this C3 project is about like the complete solution, like complete business solution rather than environmental solution. So that it can run within the existing business environment that we have in terms of pricing of the cup, in terms of pricing of the coffee, and so that every single entities like Carting Properties would be mainly developing the washing stations or the operating the kind of structures or assets, and then you have vendors like different companies with the coffee owners and so on. Then we have consumers and how those would be interacting in between different stakeholders, and how like different stakeholder would be benefited from the solutions, and what would be the pricing mechanism from that. So these are the like two that I would like to share with you today about like the initiative that we have at Carting University in terms of zero waste and circular economy program that we have.
Great. Thank you so much, Atiq. So as I said, I've been involved in the Zero Waste Academy since 2002. And in that period of time has involved a whole range of different things. Some things I'm not involved in so much now, and over time, my role has evolved into more of a conventional academic role within the university. In particular, these are the areas where I guess I teach what other people might teach as waste management or even sustainable waste management. We teach at Massey through the lens of zero waste. And I think that's a rigorous, scientific, robust and future-proof model for teaching. And I'm also involved in doing a PhD looking at municipal zero waste methodology. Just a quick slide here. This is one of the keynote papers for, or the options for Massey University's Masters of Environmental Management. So it's a fully web-based paper. And as I said, we look at what other people might look at as waste management. We look at through the lens of zero waste and tip some of the old ideas on their head and examine them based on, I guess, the raw facts that waste management theory has got us to where we are today, which is fundamentally a global and human health emergency. And that's not just the zero waste greenies saying that. Those quotes and the references to that, the first slide that Atiq talked about, are from mainstream waste management commentators. So 20 years ago, when we started in this space, zero waste was considered really extreme. It's actually become a very normalized concept now and integrated with the concept of a circular economy. In terms of the nexus for international zero waste academic collaboration, I guess one of the reflections that I would say is that I think educational space and the campaign community-based space have a real opportunity to work together. I think we're just scraping touching the sides on that opportunity, but in this slide here, I wanted to sort of capture sort of the differences of zero waste campaigning and community-based work, and then some of the key opportunities within educational mode, because there's different rules of engagement. They're kind of different, but they can be connected and there can be collaboration. And I guess in terms of my sharing of the case study work, I want to illustrate that connection between the university and our host city. In my case, that's Palmerston North City, and the opportunity for student and community engagement in problem solving in the real world for the real world. So one of the first key opportunities, I think, for people that are involved in an academic context, or zero waste from an academic or scientific context, is to support advocacy organisations. And one advocacy organisation that I'm involved in is the New Zealand Product Stewardship Council. And I'd like to give a shout out to my colleague, Tricia Farrelly, who's in the picture in the bottom left-hand corner of this slide, and she does some amazing work alongside other people from the Zero Waste Network and local government in New Zealand in keeping the idea of this Product Stewardship Council as an advocacy organisation addressing the issue of particular plastic waste, but all waste, and how product stewardship and extended producer responsibility is a critical economic instrument for dealing with waste issues. So that's one opportunity that people in an academic context have to make a contribution to the zero waste community. As I said, in the early days, I was involved in NZQA industry training. There's a bit of backstory to that, but we obviously can have a support role and a leadership role potentially in a collaboration and involving in particular resource development. So I wanted to just illustrate some of the things that I've been able to be involved in, and in terms of publications that are both contributing to zero waste industry, but are challenging around the issues that aren't being addressed by the conventional waste management thinking. Now, this is the beginning of a very quick case overview of a case study called the Palmy Plastic Pollution Challenge Problem. And this, even though I've been working in this space for 20 years, I encountered this issue locally in the streams flowing into the Manawatu River when I was cycling with my boys alongside the Manawatu River. I took this composite of slides and I was shocked actually as to how much plastic is going from our streams running through the city into the river, and it became a very acute opportunity for me to do something and work locally. And of course, the first thing you do when you're a scientist is you employ your children. This is my son Wilson. He's now 15 and taller than me, but at this point he was only 11 years old. So I got involved, and our family got involved in supporting him doing a waste characterization project, looking at the plastic waste that were extracted out of these streams running into the local river. And it was a really enjoyable family project, and it morphed into what became the Palmy Plastic Pollution Challenge. Interesting enough, suddenly, once the information got out there, we were very quickly invited to have a meeting with the local mayor, the mayor of our city, and my son got to give a presentation about his research. And it evolved into a much bigger project when the council started to take notice. And I think this is one of the powerful opportunities of engaging young people in science, is suddenly when you get to a meeting with the city council and children are involved, all the adults start behaving themselves and listening, which is really interesting. So this project has grown. It's now 4 years old, and this slide just illustrates the timeline of the Plastic Pollution Challenge project. And also, we shifted from an 11-year-old boy doing citizen science to a whole group of citizen science. And so we developed a more robust scientific methodology, and that's an ongoing process, developing the citizen science methodology for looking at macroplastic, but actually all forms of plastic pollution. So this slide just captures some of that methodology. Ultimately, we've gone from one kid doing a science project to we've now collected plastic pollution monitored over 41 sites right across the stream network running through our city. And we collected over 11,000 pieces of litter. And I really like to acknowledge at this point Laís Vidotto from Brazil, who came over as a student intern based at Massey University here and did so much of this amazing work and the graphics. So Laís, I hope you're listening to this. Hi, you're welcome back in New Zealand. As soon as we're all out of lockdown, I hope we see you again. But we began to scientifically, or more scientifically, quantify the problem of plastic pollution in our city, and along the way communicate that problem, but also draw the community into designing processes to address that problem, change processes. Along the way, we've had over 1,000 people involved, even more now this year, and this slide just illustrates the types of community engagement that have been involved in this project, from school-based curriculum studies to holiday programs, categorizing litter, and looking at this problem. And there's one thing that I would have to say is, when you get the community involved looking at this issue up close, I think it's a really powerful behavior change opportunity. And so I just wanted to just finish by talking about, I mean, all projects have a vision and an aim, but our key aspiration is that we involve the community, and the university is very deeply connected with our local community, and we're very much operating out of a Living Labs ethos, and we are learning about the problem, but we're actually attaching that learning to change. And so our city is the first city in New Zealand, as I understand it, to have a plastic pollution strategy that was developed by the community, and this year in 2020 we're beginning to implement that and put it into place. Through 2020 we've had more ongoing project iterations, and the project has grown. We've had some funding from the Waste Minimisation Fund in New Zealand. We have a full-time project a part-time project coordinator. We have done some mic back on. We've done some publications. So this is one of our publications, sharing our methodology to other communities in New Zealand. We had a cluster of Korean business students who came to New Zealand, and they did a project looking at this and looking at all the different forms of packaging and how they could be redesigned. And we've got now looking at macro and microplastics getting into the stormwater, and doing a pilot project looking at ways of intercepting that and changing that. So there's a whole range of different things you can do. These are just a few case studies, but these case studies, I guess, are involved in this idea for this nexus for international zero waste academic collaboration. And in very simple terms, we think there's a really powerful opportunity for people in the university sector and for universities to partner with their host cities and their host communities, and be involved in addressing the multiplicity of research issues and problems that are thrown up as we move towards zero waste into a circular economy. And so there's leadership opportunities, demonstration opportunities, teaching and research opportunities, network and engagement. I won't go through all of this, but extension learning and sharing, and then the whole concept of redesign and how do we change production, products, packaging, and pretty much everything about the way that we live. So really, this is our last slide. I want to thank Atiq for all of that he's doing, and for his friendship and collaboration, because it makes it a lot easier when you're working in this space, when you have connect with other colleagues around the world. And we'll also a shout out to our colleagues in Brazil, and hopefully we will be able to build on this idea. We don't know what the future holds, of course, but we think there's a great opportunity for other people working in this space. So this is an open invitation to get in touch. Our contact details are in the slides. We hope you've enjoyed the presentation. So for me, it's goodbye.
Thank you, everyone who is listening to us. Thanks.
And hopefully we will see you again. I just want to finish by saying thank you very much to the Zero Waste Network and the Zero Waste International Alliance for putting on the Digital Summit. We think it's a fantastic thing. Really looking forward to all of the other presentations, and yeah, just want to say a big thank you.